And hey, welcome back to the Tad Lowe Show with me, Tad, the Diet Coach, and my co-host,
Nigel.
Nigel Lomax. Yes, thanks, Nigel. Hey, last week's show was pretty fun. We talked a lot about the Mr. Olympia predictions. We talked a little bit about the Tampa Pro because that was the week prior. This week, I'm kind of excited. This whole thing's getting all like warmed up with the Olympia coming up in about 28 days or so, and I'm getting really excited because the open lineup looks really awesome. But you typically the 212 lineup has been what I was most excited with from year to year because that was always there was always a bit more question was who's going to fall in some of these other places. Sometimes it was the same old cast of characters in the open. This year looks like there's some really great stuff going on in both classes. So today we're going to talk a little about 212, but first. You had a blowout last week. A tire blowout while we were doing the show, which was kind of funny. I mean, not funny for you, but
right.
But you got some. But you were able to. But you were able to get everything squared away. And today is kind of a. Today, at least you're not in your car, and you're not going to get another tire blow. Hopefully, you won't have that happen again.
No. Today is a relaxing day. It is Shabbat, so I'm not really supposed to be doing anything technology-wise, but I'm
you're
I'm
not
a progressive
Jew. You're not. I am.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I'm a progressive Jew, so it's okay.
Okay, good. Well, I think the Lord would love it that you're talking about fun stuff and having a good time.
Exactly.
All right.
This is relaxing to me. I'm good.
Well, now when we were talking just before the show and kind of going over some of our notes about the Olympia, and I mean, just a couple of weeks away. I think just yesterday I posted some pictures that Shaun Roden sent to me, and I left him off my original list, and I wanted to sort of make a special note with him because I do have a lot of faith that him and Dexter Jackson both, and I posted 2 videos yesterday on my social media, on Instagram and on Facebook of the 2015 Olympia. And by the way, each of their performances of the 2015 Olympia, because both of them looked incredible that year, I thought. And if Shaun or Dexter come in anything close to those forms, I think then you're going to find this is going to really, really be an interesting battle because with all the great cast of characters in the open division, it's going to make the judges' jobs very difficult because I can be judged when I sit on a panel and look at bodies. It's sometimes when everybody is so good. And you really, and you only got for instance in a top 5 slot, you only have 5 slots to fill. You kind of have to make some judgment calls, and so a lot of times you're splitting hairs. So sometimes it literally boils down to, so you're looking at what they don't have, and it's hard to make some of those assessments, and that's a personal opinion based on what the judges what they see, what your eyeballs see. So when I'm looking at a body, how they display their physique. So really at this level, it's kind of funny because people talk about this at other competitions. At this level, it's critical for your performance to be right on and for your presentation to be right on, for how you display your physique, the uniqueness that you give each pose, what you highlight, your tan, all those little tiny details make such a big difference. While in other shows they may not.
So. Right. Yeah. I think that if there was a way that the top 5 would be juggled around, one of the ways is, like you said, if both of them came in like 2015, even if they came in at 2015, I would not have them in the top 5. But here's the way that I would have them in the top 5. They pose so much better than the top 5 that we have already established. So that means that Dexter and Shaun basically pose better than Rolly.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that versus, like, if you look at the way that they pose and the way that they display and the way that they can hide things that are not necessarily great body parts and everything, Rolly does not have that ability at this point in time. I think he's getting better, but I think he's really vulnerable in that. In which case, if they come in and they come on and they pose like they normally do, that is a way that I think that they could possibly get into the top 5. And I'll say that about, somebody like, somebody like Brandon Curry in a way as well. I don't know how well Brandon poses now, but I did see him last year, and I thought that some of his poses were a little bit more dodgier last year. But he has been working with Chris Cormier, and so has Rolly. So I'm thinking that, their posing is going to get a lot better. But I think that is one of the ways that Shaun and Dexter can expose them if they're on 2015.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just recap a little bit on your top 5 prediction because it's interesting to me, and I kind of made a funny comment on social media when you posted it. Yeah. Number 5, you have William Bonac, and number 4, Rolly Winkler. Number 3, Brandon Curry. Number 2, Phil Heath, and then of course number 1, Big Ramy. And it's an interesting one because I think to me it looks more, and I'm not trying to trying to make fun of it, but to me it kind of looks like a wish list. it's like everybody wants to see. Well, let me address this. Everybody wants to see Phil Heath lose or at least get knocked up and see Big Ramy really sort of fulfill his destiny as this gigantic, sort of second coming of the biggest, baddest thing. And, of course, it's hard to deny that Curry, whether you put him in, I had him in second position, whether you put him in second, third, or fourth, it's a huge, no matter what, he's made a huge step up. And this year, if he comes in shape, and he shows what he's shown on social media, and he shows this increased his increased mass and conditioning and physique, then he's already won. Doesn't matter if he actually wins the show; he's already won. But I have a hard time swallowing Rolly beating William. Now, I know William Bonac. I know you're a big Rolly Winkler fan. I know you, and Rolly has just serious wow factor. But I really have a hard time with that.
I love Bonac. I've loved Bonac since he was a 212 because he's a short guy and I'm a short guy too. I've seen recent pictures of Rolly though. Rolly already has the sunken face, like skeleton face. He looks really big, really round, and I saw a picture of him with leggings on, and he looked striated and cut in leggings, and he still has that little tiny waist, or that smaller waist now, and he's keeping it. And that, to me, that's impressive when he has a sunken face and he's keeping that waist like that, like at the Arnold Europe. That's pretty impressive for him because he's not known for having that sunken face in 4 weeks before. Normally he has a fuller face. And he's not in condition about this time of the year, but he looks like he's in condition. Right. They say he's about 85%, and I believe it. Now, Bonac stays in condition no matter what. I've never even seen a video of him out of condition. I haven't seen one.
No, I haven't seen him out of condition either. As a matter of fact, the kind of funny thing is, you know who William Bonac reminds me of? These days, his physique is starting to morph a little bit into this. For me, he reminds me a lot of Kai Green, just a shorter, more compact version of him. And he and when he gets up on stage and he poses, he's got that really wonderful complexion. It's dark. You can see all the detail. And so when he hits shots, you go, wow, And while Rolly has some of that too, just in sheer size, I just have a hard time when I look at them standing side by side. Last year, I remember making note of this. It was clear to me that William Bonac is ahead of him in a certain sense, from an aesthetic standpoint, and from just But again, this is the great thing about these shows and about especially the Olympia. We all have our favorites. We all have good reasons why we like one over the other, and we're all correct. But when we're looking at predictions, there's going to have to be somebody over somebody else, right? And from my perspective, my point of view, I really have William Bonac ahead of Rolly, but I get it. I hear you.
Again, Bonac came off of winning the Arnold USA, and then Rolly beat him, right? In Europe, and beat him, and he beat him on most shots as well. If Rolly comes in better than that and everything, and Bonac again, I love Bonac's physique and everything, but his progress pictures don't look anything different than Columbus. If he stays the way of Columbus and Rolly gets better, I think Rolly gets over on him because he's freaky and he'll look better. Now, as far as Brandon Curry, I have no problem having Brandon Curry as number 2 at all. But I also think that Ramy is going to, and I didn't think this in the past at all. I'm a big Ramy fan, but I never thought that he, in the last couple of or 3 years, that he could actually beat Heath. But this year, I think he can. I think he's got enough muscle maturity. He's got enough under his, training under his belt and everything. His camp looks extremely serious. The fact that they're not putting out pretty much any progress pictures after the last project, the progress pictures that we've seen is notable for them, because normally they at least give you something at 4 weeks, and we haven't seen anything in 4 weeks other than his training pictures. I did see a picture of Phil Heath. I think he's going to come in condition and everything, but I mean, again, it's hard to tell with Phil, because if he's standing by himself in front of the NPC logo, he doesn't look impressive. But when he's out there and when he's in the Olympia crowd and everything, all full and tanned up, he all of a sudden is 3D. So it's really hard to figure out whether or not he actually, is smaller, bigger, or whatever until he gets out there.
Well, I did see some pictures of him, when he was some training shots at the NPC, when he was at the NPC just this weekend or just this last couple of days.
Yeah.
And he's still, he looks, I think he's, it's going to be a slightly improved Phil. He does keep I would say he keeps a little quiet on when it comes to social media, but he's not totally like Sean Roden or like some of the other guys who are totally hiding away. And that tells me volumes. I still have every confidence that I think that he's still going to pull out a victory. And I think Ramy, I think you're right. I think they're keeping his camp's keeping him really quiet. I know that that Bader Budai over there, Bader in Kuwait, he has a ton of confidence in Ramy and his team there, especially Ramy, to be able to win. As a matter of fact, that's what he told me last year. I think I said this on the show last week, that when I was judging the Kuwait Classic last year in October, we talked about Ramy a little bit, and he said, just wait till this year, this next Olympia, he's going to win. And now that could just be his confidence in his guy. Of course, he's going to have to. He should have confidence in his guys, in all of his guys. But from what I can tell from the previous year's progression and my own guesstimate, again, this is just predictions, right? I don't really have a crystal ball, but I would say that it would surprise me if Ramy got second. I think that he's going to still have the same problems that he's had in the past. I hate to say that because I don't want to jinx him or voodoo him. I think but I do think that he's improved every year, and I think that he will improve again. I really do. I believe that he will, but I don't think it'll be enough. I think the battle there will be between him and Brandon Curry. That's my guess. Now I could be off on this, but that's my sense of it.
If I look at a picture, if we're going to go on pictures, right?
Right.
And who stood in front of the NPC logo better, right?
So now is that the game now?
or wore the NPC let me rephrase that. Wore the NPC T-shirt better, right?
Right.
Because after Phil put one out, Nathan put out one that had the same exact shirt on, right? And if I look at the both of them with the same exact shirt on, and Nathan did this on purpose, I would say that Nathan actually looks better than Phil. Okay, if I'm going to go on who looked better in an NPC shirt at this point in time
I'm going to
which is interesting,
right?
Which is interesting because this tells you how though Phil does not look impressive right now. When you see pictures of him, you go, okay, well that's fine, When you see pictures of Brandon Curry, you're like, oh my gosh, wow.
Well,
right?
That's kind of the deception, right? That's a bit of the deception in all of this.
Exactly. And when all of a sudden when Phil gets on stage and he starts moving and he does the first relaxed pose and everything just starts moving, then you're like, oh, I get it, but
there's also
shots, those still shots, they're nice, but
I call it, there's absolutely what I call like gym tank top syndrome, where guys can look great in the gym or out and around, but when you get them on stage, something happens, and then boom, poof, they just disappear. And Phil's not one of those guys. I was not one of those.
Exactly.
I wasn't either when I competed. I always looked much more impressive on stage than I did in person, I thought. But I will say that I think, Phil doesn't have as much. And I think the reason why is because it's the nature of his physique. So the nature of his physique, he doesn't look at the way he's winning based on some of that. He's got this round fullness. He's not one of those dry, grainy guy. Like William Bonnick definitely has a like, for instance, William has a very hard granite-like sort of appearance, and Phil doesn't have this all the time. It's not that he's not in shape, but he has this, like you said, this 3D quality to him, this very bulbous superhero looking, sort of look to him, and that's what gives it. And so there's all of these, like I said, every open competitor, or for that matter, every Olympia competitor who has a shot at winning has to have one quality. They have to have a wow factor. And Phil's got this about his physique. William's got this about his physique. Ramy, I haven't seen the wow. So like the wow, he looks so much more impressive when he's in the off season, when he's prepping, when he's got all this fullness. Then something happens, man. And he still he's made improvements. He's gotten better, but it's just not enough to overcome a guy like Phil, or a guy like, or some of these other competitors who have beat him at the Olympia. So, but
what was
that?
The wow was in New York. The wow was in New York Pro. That was his wow. That was, to me, that look right there was his wow. You improve on that look, and that's the wow. And that's at 275, 280, I think.
Okay.
So.
Well, we'll definitely in a couple of weeks, 20-something days, we'll see. It'll be fun. You and I are going to the Olympia. We're going to be reporting. We're going to be working with the NBC News, reporting, doing the tweets as I always do. And, of course, we'll be sending out some social media stuff throughout the weekend, maybe do some interviews. It'll be fun, just a lot of stuff. So I'm kind of looking forward to having my partner, having a partner out there to help me with this stuff, and also to share the experience and have a shit ton of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm getting excited.
Now, I'm excited about it. Extremely excited about it. But I do have, I do have an opinion about you were saying about presentation and everything.
Oh, sure.
I do think that one of the problems with both Ramy and Rolly is their tan. They just need to be darker, I think, on stage. They kind of wash out.
Ramy for sure. Ramy for sure. It's funny. Isn't he? He's Kuwaiti, right?
No, he's Egyptian.
Oh, he's Egyptian. Oh, that's right. He's Egyptian. That's right. So being Egyptian, man, he should get a good damn tan. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't understand it myself, and the same with Rolly. If
that dude's dark.
Rolly,
he's dark.
Yeah, I mean, Rolly, like for instance, like during the Arnold Europe, he had a perfect tan during the Arnold Europe. But if you remember during the Arnold Classic in Columbus, he did not, and he was off.
Yeah.
So you can see the difference. If you put them side by side, you can see the difference in the tan and the difference in the conditioning with him. And I think Ramy is the same. When Ramy was at the New York Pro, he had a great tan. But, ever since then, they have not tanned him dark enough. And those lights, they blot you out. So if you're light, you become non-existent. And if you look at the first day where everybody was like, okay, Ramy was impressive, but he wasn't that great. And then the second day he came in and everybody thought he looked great. Not only did he tighten up, but he also tanned differently. And the same thing happened to Rolly too. The first day, Rolly didn't look, the first day Rolly looked great. And then the second day they overcarbed him. So, they the Kuwait guys, need to figure out how to make them come out both days the same way. They're having the same problem that Kai Green had when he was competing.
Right. Well, so you're sticking by your top 5 prediction, right?
I am sticking by it. I think Rami is going to shock you, and when he does, then you just owe me sushi. A lot of sushi.
All right, well, I will concede to that. So your predictions are number 5, William Bonnick; number 4, Rolly Winkler; 3, Brandon Curry; 2, Phil Heath; and 1, Big Ramy. I'm just going to stick by my predictions with one caveat. My prediction is Rolly in 5th, Ramy in 4th, 3rd, William Bonnick; 2, Brandon Curry; 1, Phil Heath. The only two wild cards that I would say that enter the mix is Dexter Jackson and Shaun Roden. If Shaun Roden comes in the way I think that he's probably going to come in, then I see him being in that top, easily in the top 4 slot, one in the top 4 slots, and that would probably move out Rolly Winkler in my book, and probably might shuffle around Ramy and William Bonnick. Perhaps even Brandon Curry. I would even go so far as to say I would adjust my prediction to say I would be happy with seeing William or Shaun Roden in that 2nd spot instead of Brandon, and bumping Brandon down to the 3rd spot, or even possibly the 4th, depending on what Dexter Jackson looks like. Because Dexter is, as I've said before, he's always dangerous, and somebody you and I haven't really talked about. Dexter Jackson, one of the most senior competitors, one of the most winningest guys up there, a previous Mr. Olympia, the only previous Mr. Olympia aside from Phil Heath, I believe, on that stage. So, and I've seen some pictures. He looks insane. Yeah. So, and I know that this is probably his. More than likely, I don't know for a fact, I haven't talked to him, but I think I heard him say this was probably going to be his last Olympia, or at least pretty close to it. And if it is, then he's not going to do that. He's going to pull all the stops out. And so I would suspect that we are going to see him in that top 5 lineup. The only reason why I didn't include him was because I hadn't seen anything as of yet from him there. He's pretty quiet from a social media standpoint. And as I've said before, for all those competitors out there who think they want to go out there and shock the world and go into hiding like Dorian Yates used to do, it doesn't work in this environment very well in the environment of social media today. And you really want to build momentum, I think, especially with big shows like this, especially when you have judges who everything is so close. You just don't want to get any chances to you getting overlooked. And I think a lot of times people hide away because they're really not confident. They're not. If you're confident, man, you know it. Then you don't care who sees it. That's my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. That's just how I see it. So, but that's what I would say. But I haven't heard you say anything about Dexter really. So, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I actually saw a couple of Generation Iron has had a couple of pictures of him, and he's working at Milos's gym, which I thought was kind of interesting because I thought that he was working over at World. World. But I guess he.
Oh, I thought he was. He's always been at Gold's, like Ben said.
Yeah, I thought he was working over at Gold's, but now it looks like he's working out at Milos's gym.
Oh,
or
maybe he's just trying to keep himself under wraps or something. I don't know, or just trying to stay private.
I don't know, but actually he looks good. I mean, of course I'm very fond of him because he is around our age and everything, and I think he's he's just amazing. I mean, to look like that at our age is incredible. In this Olympia, though, I think it's kind of really stacked, and I feel the same. My thing is they could outpose them, and if they look like 2015, yes, I think that they could. But the thing about Shaun, not so much as far as Dexter, because I think Dexter's body is more complete, and Dexter is always on. So to me, he has the best chance of getting into the top 5. I disagree with you about Shaun, only because every one of the top 5 that I've mentioned before has a better back than Shaun. Now, if Shaun comes with a better back, and I know that Chris has been working on Shaun's back because you can see it in the videos on YouTube and everything, they're working relentlessly on his back. If he comes with a back, you're right. He could probably go to the top 5 because he's got such a great, his lines and his physique is just beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's the case with Shaun. But if I were going to go with either one of them to get into the top 5, it would be Dexter, not Shaun.
Fair enough. Well, that's the That's our predictions. Let's roll into the 212 because before we get too deep into our into this episode, I know this year, now in previous years, I've been really excited about the 212s. I am this year again. There's a couple really unbelievable competitors this year, and this class, because of the nature of it, this particular division, it is one of those classes that because they have to make weight. And the top, several of the top guys are always so high, well over, like Flex Lewis and stuff there, that the conditioning is always impressive to see these guys because the conditioning is always like spot on and just incredible. So now again, as of today, the 18th of August, it looks like most of the guys who qualified are going to be at the 212 at the Olympia there. So, of course, from what I understand, this is going to be Flex Lewis's last Olympia. I don't know if it is for sure. I've heard this before that he wants to move up and didn't happen, changed his mind or whatever it was, whatever the powers that be or whoever gave different advice. But it looks like it's probably going to happen. I don't know. It just sounds like it is. Again, I don't have any inside information, but that's what it sounds like from everything I've heard. But no matter what, this year he's going to be there again, Flex Lewis, and I just don't think that Flex is going to be beat. I just don't think he's going to be beat. So but I do think the cast of characters is really awesome, and I think the guys we're going to see. Now I haven't ordered them yet, but I think the guys we're going to see are going to be, of course, Flex Lewis. I think that Shaun Clarida is going to make a top 5 appearance. Of course, I think Derek Lunsford is going to make a top 5 appearance. And I think that, let's see, I'm looking at the list here, and I really, there's a lot of foreign guys who I haven't seen actually compete directly. So it's going to be interesting. What's your take?
So I've seen basically all of them compete except for, well, of course, Ashkanani did not compete. He was, he sat out the whole year, and so did Flex. I saw, and so did Derek. I've seen Charles compete. I've seen Kamal compete. So basically, who I would have, of course, Flex is going to win it. I don't see anybody beating Flex. The only thing that could beat Flex is if Flex can't come down to 212.
He'll get there. I know it. He'll get there.
Yeah. He seems in his pictures to be very concerned about that. But just as a side note,
he's concerned about that every year. What was that?
At 205, him and Ashkanani at 225 pounds look unbelievable. And if they stay in 212 for another year, I will be astounded.
Well, I do think I really do think this year that you're going to see Ashkanani be in that top 3. I think he's going to be somewhere in there. I really do. He is such an impressive bodybuilder and just the nicest guy. So maybe that's swaying my opinion a little bit too. And I judged him at the Kuwait Pro last year, the Kuwait Classic that he won. And he beat Shaun Clarida, and he beat, of course, Jose Raymond, who's also, both those people are going to be in this lineup. And so I see, now Shaun's interesting. Shaun Clarida is interesting because I thought this guy for several years was just a phenomenal bodybuilder, and he's just turning out to be everything that I had thought he would be, and more. The only problem I see with his physique is that his chest is is not full enough, lacks the depth compared to his shoulders and arms, and so when he hits certain shots, I'm disappointed. I want to see a little bit more width, a little more fullness in the chest, and so that's the only thing. But other than that, I mean, it's just so impressive to see him on stage. But I don't see him beating Ahmad Ashkenazi or Ashkanani. I don't see him beating him. He may. I mean, I don't even think he'll beat David Henry. To be honest, David Henry's on point. I don't think he'll beat him either.
Well, so my top 5 would be Flex the win. 2 is Ashkanani. 3 would be Derek Lunsford. 4 would be, and I know you're probably not going to agree with this, but 4 will be Charles Dixon.
Okay, no, I love Charles.
5, if 5 would be, and you just talked about him, Shaun Clarida. I think he's fixed his problem. I love the way he looked in New York Pro. Love the way he posed in New York Pro. And my outside dark horse that probably will make the top 10 would be Nicholas Villiard, because he's a freak. I mean, the freakiest guy I've ever seen at 212.
Who?
That kid
which guy? I'm sorry, I missed that. Which person?
Nicholas Villiard,
Oh, man.
the guy who won.
Yeah, how does he even? He doesn't even look like he's in the 212s.
Yeah. Everybody says that. He makes 212. And it's funny because he was another guy that was saying that he was going to shut it down before the Tampa and go into the Open. And I think Giles called up Peter. I think he's with Peter Tudor, and said to him, please, have him do the 212s in Tampa. He'll win the 212s in Tampa. And he won the 212s in Tampa in order to qualify. And Patrick Tudor is his name. And he won the 212s to qualify. And I know that he posted the other day that he got sick, and he is now at 210 because he got sick. So it looks like he's gonna make weight. So it's a struggle for him to make weight, but I mean, the man's legs are bigger than like my whole body. I mean,
well, this will be interesting because some of these guys I have not seen stand next to each other, and that's always sort of the mystery, the question mark, because some guys look really, 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 really impressive, and then it's hard to really. You got to see people standing next to each other. As a judge, I'm going to tell you, you just got to see them standing next to each other. It's all about perspective, right? I mean, and a lot of times that just things get lost in the translation, when that happens, and you just don't. And sometimes people look really, really impressive from one angle or one show, and then when they stand next to somebody else, something happens. So, but I totally agree that. Your assessment is good. I have a slightly different list. I actually had 6 people, but here I'll give you my top 5. So number 5, you're probably going to hate this, but I actually see David Henry in the 5th spot. I see Shaun Clarida in the 4th, Derek Lunsford in the 3rd, Ahmad Ashkanani in the 2nd, and Flex Lewis number 1. And as a close 6th, Jose Raymond.
Oh. See, I don't get the Jose Raymond. I mean, no disrespect to Jose Raymond, because Jose Raymond is a phenomenal bodybuilder. But I will tell you, first of all, that Mr. Dixon is pissed. So he's pissed that he lost the Arnold by 1 point. And he has been training like a madman, and he has the skeleton face. That is scary.
I know he is. I've seen his. I've seen a couple posts. I've seen some stuff. He looks like he's gotten over the. I want to be as big as I possibly can, and now he's looking like he wants to be the best he possibly can. And there is a distinction especially in this class with some of these guys. I've told him for several years, don't worry about the weight. Drop down. And I think you've mentioned it to him too. Other people have as well. I'm pretty sure of it. Because he seems to come in so full, so big, and then it blows his waist out a little bit. He looks blocky, and it destroys some of the really great. But when he's down in weight, he is absolutely a very dangerous competitor. But I just don't think that in this lineup, it's going to be hard. I just don't know if he's going to be able to. I just don't know what that looks like for him, because he hasn't been in that spot, in that place for a little while, and I don't know what it's going. So that's a question mark for me. I would love to see. I would love to see him. I would love to see him make a move, and if he does, then it would be. I would not argue a top 3 or 4 spot. Because Charles is a fantastic fella. Aside from me not being able to understand every word that he says sometimes, because his voice is so deep and his accent is so strong, he is an absolutely really wonderful guy, and I love him to death. And he is a superb competitor, but I haven't seen what this will be a good year for him to be able to really sort of make some of those strides and do some of that work and really bring his weight down and show the judges what he can really look like. Because in the past, I think he's just been too heavy, probably easily 5 to 7 pounds too heavy.
Yeah, but I hate to remind you of this, but who did Charles beat over in Columbus? Charles beat both Jose Raymond and David Henry. And David Henry, unless he breaks up those legs, he cannot outleg Charles.
Hey, now look,
So
I do want to qualify this. I've never liked, I hate to say this because I've never liked David Henry's physique. Never liked it. But I have to admit that he's got a good physique. He's got a really wonderful physique for bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But I've just never liked it. It's not his physique, it's the way it's set up. His legs aren't full enough. He's too, he's got such a powerful upper body. I mean, cut him off at the waist and I would say, he could easily be the best upper body in the 212s. He really has that good of an upper body, but you got to have everything. It's got to all flow together. And for me, David doesn't really flow together, but he's good enough against this lineup here with so many unproven entities and so many almost ran entities that I could say that every time I count his ass out, man, he moves up and he moves back up into I have a sneaky suspicion that he will do that again. And in this lineup with some of the new people and some of the really great physiques, I don't see him doing better than 5. But again, like you never know, right? But he may not. But I really don't see him being. If he's even close to his best, then I don't see him being out of the top 5. I just don't. Not in this lineup.
Well, I mean, I have to say his back is phenomenal. I've always wanted his back. I think he's got possibly one of the best backs in bodybuilding. I will say that I would have Jose Raymond making the top 5 before I would have David Henry if Jose Raymond comes in condition and I know he hates hearing this, but it's true. If he keeps his waist in, he sometimes he does not control his waist in every pose. And I understand that during transitions and everything else, but that's one of the things that, judges are looking at is transition. And they told him transition. When you transition, you got to hold it in. But I mean, he's the freakiest out of the both of them. He's the freakiest, and in top to bottom, he is more complete and grainier than David. If I'm looking at complete bodybuilders, if I'm looking at just the upper body, I would give David number 5. But if I'm going as complete and everything, I just don't, unless David, brings up like his legs, which I think the problem is it's not that he does not have legs. You hit it on the nail. It's the fullness in his legs. That's the problem.
Exactly.
I think
it disrupts his proportions. That's when you see him straight on. It's just, so that's the only thing one of the only things that the only sort of criticism, the biggest criticisms I've ever had of his physique, aside from him not looking me in the damn eyes when he shook my hand for the first time several years ago, which always bothers me, man. When I meet somebody, and I'm not trying to call him out of this, man. I know he's a good guy, but you're really for all you pros out there who want to be the champion for the hero for your fans. Look them in the eyes when you shake their hand. I mean, like that's that it's common courtesy. It means that you're giving them your attention. And when somebody, and I would think the guy in the military would do that. Now, either he was just it could have been just a day, but I think this was several years ago. I was working with RX Muscle doing something at the USA's or somewhere. I can't remember exactly what show. And he did, and somebody introduced us. I shook his hand, and he didn't look at me. He didn't look me in the face once, and just sort of blew me off. And I was like, "Whoa, man!" But regardless of that, I only mention that not for his sake, not to blast him or anything, because I don't think he's a bad guy or anything like that, but because I want everyone, any pros or any people out there, competitors out there who are listening, that this is part of, everybody wants to be these great competitors, but it is an entertainment sport. It is a sport of entertainment, and people do look up to you, and people do get inspired, even if you're just a great amateur competitor. And it is, and when people say they're humble and they drop their ego at the door, well, that's all a part of it. And I don't know what was going on that day. He could have been having a bad day. I don't know, but whatever the case was, I wasn't. I was having a great day.
Well, it reminds me of something. Nick Trigili, on his podcast and everything, was saying stuff about the fact that very few bodybuilders give back, and he was saying bodybuilders are, especially, IFBB pros are supposed to be role models for our sport and everything. And he didn't understand why more IFBB pros were not role models, and where are the role models and everything else. And I thought about it the other day, and even though we have not said anything about
Nick said this on his show.
Yeah, this is what Nick said. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and
Well,
even though we haven't said anything about Cedric McMillan,
uh-huh.
I will say this: Cedric is possibly the best ambassador for bodybuilding I've ever seen in my life,
Why?
and the reason for it is when he apparently when I saw an interview with him and he said one of the reasons why he was so upset about his placing in the Olympia was because he was expecting more money in order to give to this charity that he does for children.
Okay.
And it's one of the reasons why he did San Marino. So when people say, there are no role models in bodybuilding, I don't necessarily think that's true, but I also think that professional bodybuilders should be more role models. I know that Rolly Winkler has a charity that he does for kids all the time. I think that should be more brought in the forefront. And I also think that some professional bodybuilders need to be a little bit more outgoing and a little bit more friendlier, towards towards the crowd, towards their fan base. There are some that do very well, and there's some that are just very put offish, and I think that that's something that the bodybuilding community needs to do better.
I think you're probably um, I think that each competitor has their own style, their own persona, their own strengths and their own value. And for some, yeah, I think like Cedric and like some other competitors out there who may give quite a bit of their time and energy to various causes and various worthy commitments that they think is good. I think that's wonderful. We all give in our own way. And for some people, I guess I leave the latitude for each competitor to do it in their own fashion. I don't think we all need to do it the same way. For some people, it's about this. Some other people, it's not. Maybe I'm sure that, like, for instance, I know I sort of bagged on David Henry a little bit, but I wasn't trying to. But I'm just speaking from my experience. But I'm sure in his way, because I know he's been in service in the military and all these, and he's contributed to our society and to our country in really wonderful ways. And maybe that's his value. Maybe that's the way he does it. He doesn't have to necessarily be so warm and friendly to all of his fans. And I'm sure he is probably to some, but just wasn't to me. But I don't think he was trying not to be. That's the thing. So my point is that we all have the value to give in our own ways. And you're right. I mean, like, it would be wonderful if if so many of them would go and do some things that are a little bit more vocal and a little more seen. But I know that we all have to do it in our own way, and it's not that way. It's not, like I'm not the kind of guy who's going to go out there and do certain kinds of sort of humanitarian things, but I'm going to be the kind of guy who does other kinds. I'm the guy that you're going to meet, and you're always going to get a smile. You're always going to get a hug from me if you want it. You're always going to get a kind word. I'm always going to speak positively. I'm always going to be the guy who's going to be encouraging because I believe in that. And I know, and it makes me feel good. But I may not be the guy who goes and volunteers my time at the homeless shelter. Not because I don't think there's value in it, but because it's just not something that turns me on. It's like, and
Right.
I believe we should all do things that turn us on. Now, again, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think that I'm saying you're right. That I think that any pro or anybody who has a spotlight, it behooves them. It makes it'll add joy to their life. It's not so much for anybody else, because I don't believe that you should be doing all this shit for anybody else.
Yeah.
I think you should do it for yourself.
Right.
Because anybody who says, "Oh, I do it for my fans," or "I do it for this," that's great. But that kind of attitude, and those kinds of actions always stop at some point. The kind of actions and attitudes
Right.
I want them to last a lifetime, because that's authentic. And for me, it means do it for you. Do it because it feels good to you. Because if it's feeling good to you, guess what? It's feeling good to them too. You know what I mean? So in some ways, I'll say that. And to go back to David Henry and my experience with him, in some ways, that was the most authentic him that he could be at that time, and so I have to applaud him for that. Because I want someone to be honest with me. It's a period.
Exactly. No. The reason why I said that was I think that Nick is somewhat right and somewhat wrong.
I think it's interesting
that plenty of bodybuilders.
I'm just curious, and I don't mean to. I'm not trying to reflect it back at him, but he's had sort of a questionable past of sorts. And it's kind of ironic that he would speak about that. Is that what was he referring to something in particular?
Well, he was just referring to, it was one of the broadcasts that he had about, just authenticness and giving back, and what kind of role models bodybuilders should be, and he was specifically talking about Phil Heath. And I don't know Phil Heath personally or anything to that effect.
I know Phil Heath real well, so I'll give my reflections. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, he was just saying that he's not really out there. He's not really the personality. It's the same stuff that people have said about Phil Heath, as far as being the ambassador towards bodybuilding, and that he thought that there should be more ambassadorship in bodybuilding. And I thought that some of his comments were okay, and I agree with, but I also see that some of his comments are not really true, in the fact that there are bodybuilders that in their own way they do things that's just phenomenal, and maybe they want to do it in their own way and in private, and it's meaningful to them and it's meaningful to the person that they're doing it for, or either that or they make it recognizable and everything else. So to me, I thought it's a good sentiment and everything, but I'm not so sure that bodybuilders don't already do it. And maybe it's, bodybuilders are not like basketball players. We don't have, somebody like LeBron James, that, makes a ton of money, that can open up a school. And by the way, LeBron, thank you. but bodybuilders don't make that much money, to the point where they can do that. But, there are bodybuilders like, Cedric, who give a lot of support to kids who are who need help. He's also been in the military, just like David Henry. They've been in the military, and to me, that type of service, that's the service I didn't do and that I wouldn't have committed to doing. And they did a service for themselves and for the United States. So I mean, that's good enough as well. Anything that anybody wants to do for them, for themselves and the better of humanity, whether or not it's out loud or not, is good, But I do see his point. But I also see that there's plenty of good people in bodybuilding that are pros that are doing their part, the way that they want to do their part.
Yeah, well, I think all sports, we take our sports heroes, whether they be bodybuilding or whether it be basketball or football or whatever, we take them so seriously, and we exalt them and put them on a pedestal a bit. And while I think that's kind of neat, it's only because we admire their achievements, and we admire what they could do on the field. We admire all those kinds of things, and that's really great. But I think that that you do have to be careful, because they're just people, right? And
Right.
And it's like, for instance, and they have the right to conduct their life in the manner in which they see fit. They have the right to be able to hold the views and opinions that they see fit, just like anybody else does. Now, and some would say, they have a responsibility because they're in front of my kids and blah, blah, blah. No, they don't. Your children have a responsibility to be able for them to be able to assess in their world what they think is good and bad. And if they're looking at a sports hero and wanting to emulate that, it's the parent's job to make sure that they guide and direct them, make sure that it's appropriate. Because heaven forbid, some people, like, I give a great example, Colin Kaepernick, who I think is awesome, and I totally back up and support everything that he stands for. And with taking a knee and all stuff, like, to me, this is the centerpiece of what this country stands for and what I believe liberty is all about. It's about being able to express your opinions and stand up for something in a unique way. And I'm not trying to make this a platform for that particular cause, because I know people disagree with this stuff, and it pushes buttons for some people but that's just, I don't have any of those prejudices against people's ideas. Somebody who wants to venerate a flag or venerate an anthem, a national anthem, for whatever, and give it more meaning give it meaning that they want to give it. I'm all for that. It doesn't have that for me. I'm a patriotic person, but I'm not. But I'm above it. But first and foremost, I'm for any person Doesn't matter if you're a citizen of the United States or somebody, a citizen of Russia or of the Soviet Union or anywhere else in this country or in this world. I'm a person for humanity, first and foremost, and that goes for anybody. And I'm there to support anyone's freedoms to do whatever the fuck they want, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. And the way I see it, Colin Kaepernick wasn't hurting anybody. And they say, "Oh, we're not on the job. When it's called your life. It's called like when we do what we do in our lives. We stand up for the things we stand up for in our lives." And I think he did it. I think I salute him, man. I think he's the epitome of what a great American should be. It's like standing up for what you believe in, even if everybody else doesn't agree. It's okay if people don't agree. It's okay if we hold different opinions. That's okay. But it's not okay to tell somebody what kind of opinions they should hold. It's not okay to tell somebody else what kind of experience they're really having. If you're having an experience in this country and you want to make it known, or you want to support others who are having an experience and want to point that out, but like that's important. That's an important part of our country. It's an important part of our experience here as people to be able to recognize that in other people. And I would have rather people had said, "Oh, I think that whole situation would have been diffused if people would have asked the question, why do you feel that way? And started a dialogue instead of saying you're doing it wrong." No. So that's like saying I'm tying my shoe the wrong way. It's like I'll tie my shoe any damn way I want as long as it gets tied. And that's the point. It's like, so I don't know. And I don't know if that this whole issue of sports heroes and giving back and being a role model, I think it's a wonderful thing to be a role model, but be careful. We're all a role model to somebody. We all are.
Well, I actually think that Charles Barkley was right because my role model, Charles Barkley said, "I should not be your role model to your kids. You should be your role model to your kids. Parents should be the role models to your kids." And my role model was always my mother. I might like a lot of different, political figures, a lot of different sports figures, a lot of different movie figures as well. But technically, the way that I grew up and the way that I carry myself and the way and what I think and everything else spurns from the way that she raised me. And one of the reasons why I do like Colin, is the fact that my mother would have raised a son like him. That's what she would have been about. So, that's one of the reasons why I like him. Do I think he's a great football player? Not particularly, not at all. But I think he's a good role model. But to me, if you have kids, the role model should be the parents should be the role model, and the kids should like those people, but they don't necessarily need to look up to them, unless they, those people that they're looking up to in sports and whatever have characteristics of their parents that they see in their parents or they see in their upbringing that are they relate to. But to me, I think Charles Barkley was hit the head on the right there. Is that the role model is internally, not me, that sort of thing. So I don't really, I think that it's very nice that when people like give you back to society, I think it's great. It's not a must. It's a nice thing. And I hope that everybody does that. But is it going to affect whether or not I like you on stage? Not particularly. I mean,
no, it doesn't make a difference whatsoever. Like, just perform. That's what
difference whatsoever if I'm a or it's not. I mean, as long as you don't go against what I feel is my value system. So if all of a sudden your values probably don't equate to my values, I may have an issue with that. But I still think that you're a great athlete.
Right.
That just means that we're indifferent. I'm indifferent to you as a person, but as an athlete, you're fine with me.
Well, for me, I take a slightly modified perspective on that. I totally respect that in you and in anybody else who feels that way. But I never want to limit myself. So when I have a difference of opinion or difference of perspective on anybody, whether it be an athlete or whether it be a person or whether it be, it doesn't matter if it's political or spiritual, religious, or just an opinion about culture and society behaviors, I think that everyone is entitled to hold their own opinions, and I support that. And I would not, it would not infringe in any way on my feelings or my interactions with them. I support everyone's ability and right, not just right, but innate right to be able to hold those opinions or those ideas as true for themselves. Just don't try to make them true for me. And so I,
Well,
but I don't, because I really truly do believe that we all create our own realities, we create our own worlds, and we live in those worlds. And it's not for me to tell anybody else what world they're going to live in. I just share my world, and if somebody likes parts of it, take a part of that world and use it for yourself. But if it's not, and part of my world is offensive to somebody, then don't look at it. And
yeah,
don't use it.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think we had this conversation about, bakeries that will not bake a gay cake.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm you're not baking a gay cake. That's your that's your value system and everything else. But that does not mean that I need to buy my cake from you. There are plenty of other cakes, places that I can buy a cake. But I'm not going to say, hey, listen, I want to bring you down or anything to that effect.
Yeah. Well,
I might not.
I guess when it comes to when it comes to perspectives, I'm a little the nuance here for me is that I don't if I didn't hold the same ideas. Let's say I was met somebody who's racially prejudiced against Black people or against Asian people or something of that nature, even if it's against me, like Asians or Native Hawaiians or something, I would still honor that individual just as I would expect them to do to me, and I would buy a cake from them. I would do it, and the reason why is because it's their right to hold that opinion, even if I disagree with it, and I expect them to afford me that same right. Now, if they don't, that's okay. That's on them. It's not on me, and it's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of them. And so, but I can't change. I don't want to let anybody else's attitude affect my good vibration, my good feelings, my good life, my good perspective, my way of being in the world. And my way of being in the world is open, joyous, loving, understanding. And I can't let anybody do that. If I do, then I become just like them. If I sit out there and I heard one of my favorite comedians, he died, I think, a couple years ago, Mr. Bean. I don't know if Rowan Atkinson. I saw somebody post something that he was talking about. It was like freedom of speech. I can't remember exactly what they termed it, but he was really talking about the idea of how we sort of what his notions were about the kind of speech that we have and and when we speak against people, and that really what we really want to do is shut people up, and a lot of people wants to do that, even because if somebody believes that their speech or their ideas are not good and against the grain of society, even if it's something like racism or something of that nature, that we shouldn't shut them up. That it's not an idea. The idea isn't to hush that kind of voice. As a matter of fact, which I agree with him, the idea is to encourage it. Speak it out. Show it. If you want to tell somebody that freedom of speech is the way to go, you can't just select one kind of speech and avoid other kinds and silence other kinds. You can't say that if you're going to support the idea that we all have the right to hold ideas, then you can't be selective with what ideas those ideas really represent. Like if somebody has the idea that they think that there was a time when I think a lot of people, when like there was a movement within the United States, a KKK, they wanted to send all the Black people back to Africa. Okay, well, we got to support the idea that that's an idea out there. We don't have to like the idea. We don't have to support it as something to enforce, but we have to support the right to be able to talk about it for people and for people to be able to legitimately hold that idea. But they also have to support the idea that everybody else has the right to support their own ideas, have their own agendas, and have their own ideas. But you can't silence the dialogue. You can't say, you can't talk about that. You can't say that. You can't do that. You can't burn flags. You can't take a knee. That kind of crap is just limited thinking, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It actually goes against all the things that we stand for when you look at it at its core values, our core values as a country, as a people, as a human race. It goes against it in every way, shape, or form. You can't select one idea as better than the other.
Well, in my family, we always said we actually like the fact that people voice their opinions loud and clear, because that means that we know exactly where we're going to spend our money.
Right.
So if all of a sudden, I mean, we want them to say, oh yeah, our real true value is the fact that we do not, like certain amounts of people. Okay, fine. That you have the liberty to say that, and I have no problems with that. But I have the liberty to not spend my good money there and promote your your lifestyle,
Absolutely,
or to promote your values.
Again, like that's
So,
a personal choice. That's like, yeah, that's your personal choice. I support that.
It's a personal choice, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a personal choice,
and my choice in that, like I said before, is to not disrupt. See, because if I do that, what I do is now this is just me. It disrupts my good feelings. It makes me feel. I now look at somebody in the world. I look out there at somebody in the world, and because I hold a different opinion, because I hold some value that's different from theirs, I hold them in almost contempt. I hold them in a way in my heart that doesn't feel good, and I'm not gonna. And I just can't do that. I'm sorry. I won't give anybody I won't give myself the latitude to dislike anyone. I don't care what you do. I'm not going to do it. And not because for their sake. It's not for them that I do it. It's for me. I do it for myself because I don't want to hold myself apart from the good nature that I am, from the good, wonderful, loving, spiritual creature that I know that I am. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it for anyone. So you can hate me. I'm sorry. I won't do it.
It's just two forms of opinion, because what
totally.
we would say is that we're completely indifferent to them. So to me, they do not affect my life whatsoever. I move on. I'm the same person. I'm the same cheerful person. They don't affect my life because I've taken them out of my life.
Well, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. If that cake maker, if there was a better cake maker out there who didn't hold those views, yeah, I'm going to go there.
Exactly. That's always been my point about that is, to me, it's a waste of energy to sit there and protest and to sue that cake maker to make me a cake.
Right.
Okay, because that cake is already full of hate. It's completely full of hate. I'm forcing them to make a cake that they don't want when I can get a better cake from someone who wants me as a client, who is joyful about giving me a great cake. Why am I fixated on this hateful human being that is only causing me hate? Forget about that person. Move on. Let's move on to somebody who's positive instead of like focusing on that person who's negative. I may never be able to change that person's mind, and I'm sure as heck not going to change that person's mind by taking away their livelihood.
Right. Totally.
So, so, I mean, it's just the way that it is. It's just because you win a court battle and you take away their livelihood, it doesn't change their minds, and it doesn't change the people that support them, their minds either. Everybody has the ability and the right to think what they want to think. I may not agree with it. People may not agree with what I think, and that's fine. That's why we live in a free society, and I'm all good with that. But but back to bodybuilding.
Yeah, but sorry. Again, like we're gonna wrap this up, but I totally, hey, look, I totally agree. And I'm not always trying to turn this into a conversation about right and wrong, or because I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Actually, I really don't. I believe that we make our own. We like I said, we create our own realities, and I want to give everyone the flexibility and freedom to do that. I just don't agree with anybody infringing on anybody else's reality and trying to make their reality theirs. You can offer opinions. People can offer their perspectives. They can offer up their goodness, but you can't force people to believe or think or do anything. That must come intuitively and organically from each person, because that's what they came here to do. We all came here to live the life that we chose, not what somebody else chooses for us. And having said that, the life that I'm going to choose in a couple of weeks is going to the Olympia, and I'm really excited. Like I said, so give us your 212 top 5 picks again, so that we're clear, and we'll go over that one more time.
Okay, so in my reality, Flex wins.
Okay.
Ashkanani is second. Third is Derek Lunsford. Fourth is Dixon. Fifth is Shaun Clarida. Sixth is Jose Raymond.
Okay, so ours are just slightly different because mine's we're it's kind of funny. It's ironic. It's kind of funny that we're well, maybe it's not funny. It's maybe it's just illogical. But we differ in our open division predictions, but we're similar in our 212 predictions, with the exception of David Henry and Charles, which I don't have a problem with having Charles in the top 6. I just don't, like I said before, I'm just unclear whether or not what he's going to be able to present, because he's tried to do different things in the past and just falling a little short. And you can't fall too short. You can come pretty close and still come far off the mark at the Olympia because it's such high competition. But my predictions are number 6, Jose Raymond; number 5, David Henry; number 4, Shaun Clarida; 3, Derek Lunsford; 2, Ahmad Ashkanani; and number 1, Flex Lewis. Easy win for Flex, I think. And I'm really looking forward to if he decides to make that move to the Open, and I think he is, and that's what I heard. If he does that, here's my guess. If he does that, it might be if I were in his camp, and I will tell him this, if I were in his camp, I would give it 2 years, make sure that he spends a good full year not competing, so that way he can come back the following year and really because I think when you move up like that, you better be really, really ready to move up. I think he's ready, but the guys who are winning, I don't think he wants to go there and get like 10th. I think he wants to go there and be in the top 3. And I think he's got that within him. He's got that potential within him to do it, but he's going to have to really, his body's going to have to be ready for that. It's going to have to be, you know what I mean? He's young enough that it could still happen, but he's going to have to be ready for it. So, because there's so many guys there that are so seasoned, their weight is solid in that class, and this is dominated by mass monsters, guys who are 260, 270, 280, shredded, and who've been at contests at those weights for years. So that's what I think. But it's going to be fun to see him do it because he's got an unbelievable.
I think there's going to be a couple of guys that are going to go to that are from the 212s that are going to go to the Open in the next couple of years. I think Flex is one of them. I think Flex will do great in the Open. I have no problems with that at all. I think Ashkanasi is going to be another one who's going to eventually go. And it would not surprise me if Heidi Schupan does the same. He's already done an Open contest and came really close to beating Cedric McMillan. So I think that those 3 guys will, in an outside chance in 2 or 3 years, I think Derek Lunsford will follow them after that. So I think the 212s in 3 years is going to look completely different.
It'll be interesting. If it was me and I were anybody in that class, I would wait till Flex left, just so especially.
I agree, and I think that Derek. I think one of the reasons why Derek will not go into the Open, even though he clearly looks like he is an Open guy, is because of the fact that Flex is leaving.
Yeah, he's got a shot. He'll have a shot.
He's got a shot. Yeah,
because he's got no. I hate to say it, but from my perspective, at this stage in his development, he's got no shot of being the top 7 at the Open.
Yeah, well, you don't think he has a shot of being the top 7? Yeah, I agree with you on that, because
at the current where he's at currently, he's got no shot. So to me, it's like, hey man, this is the same conversation. This is the same conversation that I think I had years ago with Flex Lewis. He wanted to move up, and I was of the opinion that at that particular time, not ready, just not really. You might be able to, yes, but do you want to go up and be an almost ran, or do you want to go up and be a contender? You know what I mean? I think, especially when you're dominating the 212 Olympia and that's where you should be. And then when you really feel, I think it's just so difficult. He has to literally torture himself to get down to the 212s, and it's his body's telling him, look, let's go up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Lunsford should stay. I think Nicholas should stay right now. I think they're maybe about 2 or 3 years. I think Zane Watson, though, I think should go. Right. And one of the reasons why I think it should go is I think 212 at he has no problems making 212, but his height, the way that he's built and everything, he's built more like an Open competitor. And he's not as full when he's 212. He doesn't have that bubbly sort of muscle and everything up high and lean and looks weight. It is a lot higher than 212. Right. I mean, his weight needs to come back. So it would not surprise me if he didn't go to the Open as well, but sooner I think he goes to the Open next year.
Well, I'm looking forward to both these classes, the Open and the 212 division at this year's Olympia. It's going to be really fun. You and I are both going to be there. I'm hoping that we can record a show there and give some reflections live on that kind of stuff. Well, maybe we'll do some social media, some Instagram live, maybe some Facebook live or something like that at the show. So it'll be kind of fun. Yeah. So everybody, stay tuned for that. But for our third episode, I think it's another one, successful one down the books. Maybe next week, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other divisions, and I can educate you on some of the women's divisions, maybe. but no matter what,
you're gonna have to. Even though, hey, I've been doing some research on women's division, so I might surprise you actually.
Okay, well, we'll keep doing the research. I'm a big fan. I'm sort of a big fan in terms of my preference in all the women's divisions for figure and for physique. Those are my two favorites. I do enjoy watching the bikini, and I judge it, of course. I do enjoy it, but but what resonates with me most is the women's physique and the figure. Those two, especially the figure, because I think it's just my personal preference for what I like to see on stage. But what I like to see on the beach, well, it's different. So,
well, it's funny because I at the Arnold, I did look at the fitness category because I think the fitness category is really cool.
Uh-huh.
Because so I did look at that, and I was surprised at how much I actually did like the fitness. I have been looking at women's physique, and while I do cardio and figure, so I do know Shanique Grant, who looks phenomenal.
Yes.
And we can discuss that.
She's I suspect some big things. I suspect some big things. She's got a cartoonish physique. So we'll talk about all that stuff next week. But for another episode of the Tad Lowe Show, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm on a tight schedule today because unfortunately I'm taking my daughter to the airport this afternoon in just a little bit. She's going back to Pittsburgh to be here with her mom. She's with me in the summers, and then she's with her mother during the school years. So I won't say it's a sad day, but it's kind of like, I really enjoyed having her with me. I always do. Her and I are like two peas in a pod. We really enjoy doing that. I even got her to meditate. We meditate now together. It's awesome. So I'm really sort of, I know I'm going to miss that. So, but I have to go get her to O'Hare pretty soon. And so we're going to wrap up that wraps it up for another episode, but I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks of building up to the Olympia. It's going to be fun. Next week, we'll talk about some more divisions. We'll talk about the Olympia a little bit more. We'll find a couple other more topics to talk about. But thanks again for everybody who's tuning in. And thanks again to my co-host, Nigel Lomax. I appreciate you being my co-host and adding so much value to the conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot for asking me, and Shabbat Shalom to everybody out there. And have a great time with your daughter.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. All right, for Tad the Diet Coach and the Tad Lowe Show, salute.